Good afternoon. My name's Floss Knight, and I'm the co-founder of UK Therapy Guide. And I'm delighted to introduce Fedja today, who's come to talk to us about relationships. And we're all in a relationship, whether we're in a relationship with another person, we have relationships at work, we have relationships with our family. So I'm sure he's going to share all sorts of insights and tips and inform us about working with relationships and so on. So as I said, I'm delighted to introduce Fedja, who's been with us for many, many years. Over to you, Fedja.
Hi, I'm Fedja Dalagia. I'm a psychoanalytic psychotherapist. I've been working with UK Therapy Guide, as Floss said, for a number of years, but I've been practicing for as long as 30 years now. So,
Wow.
yes, and I've done it in different settings and contexts. So, yeah.
So you really are an expert. So this is going to be great, and I love the idea that different settings and so on. So that's really good. So I'm all ears.
Yes, well, we keep learning in this line of work. I mean, it does, the learning never stops, I guess. It's important to say.
Sure, sure. Well, I'm going to kick off with a question, which
Okay.
is, what are some of the reasons or presenting problems for which clients seek couples therapy?
Well, people come to us often when the communication has broken down or the communication is very poor, and couples complain that their interactions deteriorate into arguments which resolve nothing, and they're afraid of things escalating. And sometimes there can also be a reason that stops them from addressing issues which they feel need to be addressed because they're afraid it will lead to an argument. So that's one of the reasons. And linked to that is a hope that if those problems are spoken about in the presence of a therapist, a couples therapist, who is hoped to be unbiased and objective third party, that a resolution or a discussion about how to resolve those problems will be more likely than what the couple was doing just by themselves without outside help.
Sure. I mean, that's brilliant. I've actually had couples therapy and I found it really useful, primarily because I often expected my husband to know what I was thinking, and often he didn't. In fact, he never did. And I would be like, "Well, I'm not going to tell him." But actually, it really helped us to communicate with one another, and we benefited enormously. We're coming up to our 25th wedding anniversary, and of course, it hasn't always been easy, but certainly the communication has improved, and I am mindful of when I'm kind of detaching from the relationship and getting into that space. But I know as soon as I kind of think it through, it's like, okay, well, maybe a conversation would be a good thing rather than kind of setting it up in that way. So we got better at it. Not perfect, but we got better.
Right, that makes a lot of sense.
Mm.
I mean, I guess as therapists, we are trained and encouraged to learn to listen and to identify what reasons there might be that make a relationship not flow, or what the impediments are to good communication. Although I guess in our own sort of private lives, we are not always as good at it as we are at work as therapists.
No, that's 100%. That is for sure. But yeah, it was really useful because you're in a relationship every day of every week. So actually having that kind of focus on communication, I said this and he heard it that way,
Mm.
was a really important thing, because often I felt I was being clear or he felt he was being clear. So kind of setting up that nuance and that
Yeah.
understanding of signifiers, what that person's really saying, and often that's where we can kind of fall down. How can couples therapy help in the short and medium term?
Yes. Well, first of all, the therapist intervenes. It he listens or she listens and identifies when the communication, observing the couple, sort of breaks down, identifying some of the possible reasons for that breakdown, which is often that, one party is feeling criticized or defensive or triggered by something their partner had said and they stop listening, or they feel that they are to blame, they're responsible solely for the feelings that the therapist has. And a lot can be gained by just as you've said yourself, listening without being under pressure, which people often put themselves on to resolve or to make the other person not feel what they feel. And so what I often see with couples is like there is a hope that if you are a good partner, and this is often an unconscious expectation people place on themselves, a relationship would be conflict free, or their partner wouldn't have difficult feelings. So rather than staying with those feelings and not feeling 100% responsible for them, they are dismissed, and that creates resentment from the other partner. And then sort of a familiar way of getting stuck with difficult situations is recreated over and again. And so, as I said, the therapist sort of comes between and encourages the couple to reflect on how they are with each other, how they can better listen to one another, what are the obstacles to them being able to listen well to their partner's problems, and what are some of the sort of unconscious expectations that they've come into the relationship with. Is it like to fix the partner? Is every problem that the partner is going through experienced as their fault, which is never kind of a realistic assessment? And basically just being more thoughtful about our sort of automatic responses to the other is something that in the beginning and sort of medium term it's something we focus on in couples therapy.
Sure. Yeah, I think that's really useful because I think managing expectations, because we all have our own lives, even if we're in a couple, and that is not going to be the same. So if I've had a bad day or I've got other stuff going on, I can kind of come out sideways. So having that understanding that we are together, but we are also separate is really important. The kind of boundary, where do I begin and where do I end? And that helped me define that, because particularly when you have children, it's like, parenting is one of those things that you might parent in that way, they might parent in this way, and getting that. And it is a dynamic. Okay. Yeah. I think that's really important. You've got to be prepared for the ebb and flow, and the perfection expectation is a killer, right? It's not working, right? Because you are two different people, and hopefully for the most part going in the same direction, but there are going to be divergences from that. So right, that's useful. What about long-term therapy? Sorry, I beg your pardon.
No, that's all right. I mean, just as you were saying, I think sometimes what we encounter is this expectation. It's rather romantic that a good and successful relationship is one which will be like conflict-free, where there will be no disagreements, and as therapists, as couples therapists, we encourage people to think of relationships in a different way, as something that does require compromise, that requires work, that there will be areas where the couple will not agree on, and rather than trying to persuade the other person to one's way of looking at things, it's the acceptance of the differences, which is one of the things that makes a relationship strong and makes it less fraught, really.
Yeah. I love that, because I think definitely acceptance is key to most things. And when you can kind of let go of that, the relationship feels less brittle and more kind of malleable. You've got the ebb and you've got the flow, and you're not going to agree on everything. And I think, yes, I think that's beautifully summarized by you, and really a real nugget of wisdom. I like that a lot, kind of. And the moment you use the word acceptance, actually, I kind of felt myself go like, okay, that's the word. What about longer term therapy? Because sometimes you'll have, clients that come to you where conflict is very hard rooted. They perhaps have been in that space for a long time and it's incredibly tense and fraught. There might be a lot of untangling needed, or indeed a breakup. I'm not sure. So over to you on that question.
So when people stay in therapy for longer time, especially couples, they learn a lot more about each other. And I think the therapist's task is, amongst other things, is to sort of facilitate listening and also learning about personal histories, which in a way that is less defensive. So what I've seen with couples who've stayed in therapy for a while is that they tend to treat their partner's difficulties with more compassion, and they can also understand them in the context of the formative experiences their partner had with their family, say. So rather than being overly critical, they become more accepting, more compassionate, and more tolerant of the insecurities and vulnerabilities of their partners. So seeing them as that rather than as weaknesses to be overcome, more things to kind of deepen the empathy and the compassion towards one another. So there is a much deeper, much more profound way of listening to the other less defensively, I guess, and being more forgiving of the other, which also means more forgiving of oneself.
Sure. And again, that's beautifully put, because I think it's so important to recognize we all have our past, and when we and a narrative, and we are formed through experiences, and there will be acting out in relationships if you had either a very abusive father, mother, whatever within that constellation. And actually that can be enacted in the relationship, and understanding the different angles that people are coming from. There we find the kind of solidity, the understanding that you talk about, and we can move through those things and not let them be the obstacles in, creating some level of harmony.
Yes, quite.
Yeah. Okay. What are some of the common anxieties people have about couples therapy? It can feel a bit nerve-wracking to go into therapy. I mean, I know sometimes I thought, oh, I'm going to be hijacked. It felt a little angst-provoking, I might add.
I guess a very common thing is a fear that I will be judged. It will be like a sort of court of law where the therapist will be a judge who will say it's all your fault, or you will be found to be the guilty party. And alongside a fear, there is also, I guess, a hope that one will be proclaimed the innocent one in the relationship. It's all fault of my partner. It's only the partner that needs to change. So those two things can sometimes coexist, but in fact that's the last thing that the couples therapy will do. We are interested in the couple, and it is the couple that is our client and not the individual partners. So we are tasked as couple therapists to make the couple communicate better, resolve their problems, and we're not there really to take sides or to think in judgmental terms about problems. Rather, we see them as things to be understood, worked through, and overcome. So, there is judgment everywhere in social media and so on, but therapy is one of those places where, we hope to approach people, including couples, with in as non-judgmental way as it's possible.
Yeah, that again is really important. It's really resonating with me in the idea that, perhaps I would be judged by the therapist as the bad, the bad person in the relationship. And it definitely ran through my mind. I mean, even, I was a therapist, so I kind of echoed that. That somehow I'm going to be judged for the difficulties I've faced in the relationship, but clearly that wasn't the case. And once I felt that I could trust that process, it was very much a detoxifying thing of giving me the possibility to think about things differently. Because I think if you're in it, right, you're in the relationship, you can't necessarily see the wood for the trees. And it really helped me, or helped us with parenting issues where we might differ, and kind of solidifying what did that mean for us as parents. We wanted to give our sons a solid guidance, and that was really important. And it took a lot to get that, because I think certainly for me, I hadn't had that in my experience, and nor had my husband. And so as a couple, what does it mean to be a couple that's together and not constantly in conflict? And that was definitely something that we needed to do, because I didn't want to keep repeating the same things that I had witnessed. So that was really important.
Yes. And what you're saying is just reminding me of one of the common reasons why people do come to therapy. It is about disagreements about how to bring up children, but it's often also about difficulties in having children that can put a real strain on the relationship, fertility issues, having IVF, and the strain and the stress on the relationship is enormous. And often what happens is that people discover that they're not equally invested in the idea of having children, that to one partner it is incredibly important and to the other less so. And that needs unpacking, discussing, and also addressing and facing the possibility that they will be successful, say with IVF, or that it might not lead to pregnancy, and how they can move forward, even if those attempts, which are often expensive emotionally and financially very hard, sometimes work out and sometimes do not. So that's one of the common reasons for seeking help from a couple therapist.
Yeah, I think that's a huge thing, a big issue. Is it your fault or is it my fault? And we believe, we think in dichotomies. That's how, in opposite. So we think in that way, and kind of resonating and unifying through therapy. And it really does need somebody to guide us there. I mean, that certainly was my experience, and how valuable that was. Because it meant that there wasn't this splitting thing that can often, but of course you need to be able, like individuality, you need to be able to separate and come back to something, because you are not kind of symbiotic, you're not one, but you need to come together to be one, obviously, to procreate and have children or not, and the multiple difficulties that come with IVF, or indeed, as you said, one partner really might want children, the other one doesn't, and they feel like really difficult conversations. I mean, really difficult conversations. How do you express that in a safe way, where you can feel that you can be held, you can be heard? And if you don't want to have children, does that make you a terrible person? And so I think that's that is a journey that definitely you need to walk into that journey, and it helps enormously if you have somebody on side to guide you both through that, because it can be nerve-wracking, or you might think, well, if I say this is what will happen. You don't want to push your partner away, but you have a difference.
Yeah, I think what you're saying, Floss, reminds me of something that about couples therapy, that because our meetings are for about an hour or 15 minutes, once a week, they are moments of very concentrated emotional intensity, which both people can really sustain for, say, about an hour and once a week. And they're difficult conversations that could be had when there is a therapist present. But both parties know that, this is like their time in the week when they will talk about difficult things, and they will then move on and do lighter things, because continuously speaking about emotionally very difficult and taxing things would just, be exhausting. It can't be done all the time. So this is like a safe space to talk about difficult things that's hard to address.
Yeah, that's right, because you can't have that as your companion the whole time, because
Yeah.
life, and you need time to process and be with that person, because if it's all really, really heavy and conflict driven, it can be really absolutely exhausting. Where do you feel the couples often misunderstand the nature of their problems? What kind of is the light bulb thing?
Well, one of the things that I often think about when I think of couples are the small things which are reported to me as being it's incredible. We had a blazing row over such a minor thing, like who was going to, unload the dishwasher, for instance, or who was going to, do some other sort of, daily task, which seems sort of so mundane and so kind of small and irrelevant. Why did we, have such a blazing row, said horrible things to one another over such a small thing? We argue over nothing. And to me, I guess, as a psychoanalytic psychotherapist, that is a symptom that there may be very good reasons why something which seems like trivial and mundane has become the point of conflict. It can signify so many other things, such as, does the couple feel that they share tasks equally? That is sort of represented by minor things such as, say, unloading the dishwasher. How much do they bring into the relationship financially? Do they feel overburdened by the responsibilities to be the main breadwinner, which in turn may feel the other partner less important, or in some ways made inferior? What are their assumptions that do stem from their upbringing and their experience of how their parents related about what the gender roles are, who should do what are the tasks for the man, what for the woman, if it is a heterosexual couple. And so it can actually be an opening. A small, seemingly irrelevant argument can sort of tell us a lot more about all kinds of other things which might have accumulated as resentments, sometimes over the years.
Yeah.
And they're just a kind of a trigger or a symptom that can give us an insight into much broader problems that need to be understood and overcome.
I've noticed myself doing a lot of smiling and nodding when you're speaking. The dishwasher's definitely one of the things in my house, and we kind of get through it through humor now. But they're definitely things that I've noticed. So if I'm smiling away, I just think it's because you're striking a chord, and it has been so lovely to speak to you, and you've been very thought provocative. So I'm thinking again probably about all my shortcomings, but not in a bad way, right? I mean, that's fine. We muddle on through, but it's been really useful for me. So I certainly hope that it will be, and I'm sure it will be really useful for our readers, our subscribers to our YouTube channel, and to people that may at some point join us as a client, UK Therapy Guide. We've been doing great things for 13 years. And, you know, one of the things that we like to do is share advice and tips. You know, we only keep what we have by giving it away. And that was one of my big passions in life, that I felt I'd been given the gift of therapy and it changed my life. And so one of my big passions is sharing that. So it doesn't mean to say you have to come to therapy, but you will be in really safe hands if you do. So we share these things, we demystify things, and you've been incredible. So I can't thank you enough. And is there anything you'd just like to say?
I would just like to, just your point about shortcomings. We've all have shortcomings. It's just very human to have them. And I would just want to encourage people, no matter what the nature of what we call their presenting problem, the reasons why they feel their relationship is in some ways in trouble or needs help, to not hesitate to, you know, come to us, and we can explore it. We can have a few sessions to see if this is something that will resolve itself in a few sessions, or if longer term work is required, and we can play it by ear.
Yeah, fantastic. And that's the thing. There are answers, and there are ways where you can work through stuff and become stronger together. So look, thank you so much, Fedja, and I'm sure I'll be back talking to you again very, very soon. So thanks so much for your time, and thank you for your commitment to UK Therapy Guide, because I know you've been here an enormously long time, and we're very lucky to have you. So a big thank you.
Good to hear. Very welcome.
And if you want to hear more, drop comments in the link below. If you want to hear about different topics, if you have any questions for Fedja, then please shout us out. And subscribe to our channel, and have a fantastic rest of the day. Let's hope it gets a little bit warmer, hey? Okay, bye, Fedja.
Bye-bye.